الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us fiqh of the religion, that He teaches us ta'wil, that He makes us of those who attain taqwa through knowing what is halal from what is haram, and they act upon what they hear in the best possible manner. This is another session where we're looking at the chapter of Siyam from Mulakhas al-Fiqhi, written by Sheikh Saleh bin Fawzan al-Fawzan, Hafidhahullah. And in today's session we're going to be looking at chapter number 4 and chapter number 5. Previously we've looked at the ruling on fasting. We've looked at who fasting is obligatory upon. We've looked at how the month is established. We've looked at how the days are established. Then we looked at last week some of the etiquettes of the person who should be fasting when it comes to suhoor and iftar. And then we looked at those things which nullify the fasting. Today we're going to be looking at, if a person is not fasting, how do they make the qada? Or is there qada? Or is there no qada? Or is there no fidya at all? There are 3 scenarios, and we'll be looking at that inshallah. Then we're going to be looking at the people who are known as the Ahl al-A'dhar. Now there is Ahl al-A'dhar in almost every chapter of fiqh. This is because the people who are excused, those people who are exempted from taklif. So this is very important for us to understand when it comes to usul al-fiqh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a command, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. That means everyone who has taklif, who is accountable and responsible, is under that command. And we talked about the conditions of taklif previously. The person has to be Muslim, sane, adult, able. If you have these 4, then you are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for any one of the commands. You are accountable in front of Allah for all of the prohibitions. But there are people who are excused. So, for example, from the conditions of fasting as well as salat, is that a person must be muqim. They must be resident. If they are not resident, fasting has been lifted altogether. Salah has got its restrictions opened up, so he can combine, he can shorten, etc. These are known as the Ahl al-A'dhar, and these are very important when it comes to taklif, as we have talked about in the chapters of fiqh. When a person can understand that usul, and that asl and the usul surrounding that, then they can understand what comes off it from the chapters of fiqh. So these are the 2 things that we're going to be looking at today: qada, as well as those people excused. So chapter number 4, making up for missed days of Ramadan. Now this is a little bit confusing in the English. One may break one's fasting during the month of Ramadan due to a legal excuse, and may do so for an illegal excuse, such as having sexual intercourse during fasting or the like. Now that language there makes it seem like that he's got an option. You can fast or not fast. You've got an excuse, you've not got an excuse, it's up to you. But that's not what Sheikh Saleh means here. Sheikh Saleh, Hafidhahullah, is saying here, whether you've got an excuse for not fasting that day or not an excuse for fasting that day, you still need to make qada. That's what he means here. In both cases, it is obligatory for a person to make up the missed days of fasting. This is based on the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ, ayah number 184 from Surah Al-Baqarah. So those people who didn't fast, they need to come with an equal amount of days to be made up at a later date. So that's the first thing, the first mas'ala that we have here. If a person is not fasting for whatever reason, whether it's a legitimate reason or otherwise, they must make qada. Now, how do you make the qada? So he is saying here, Hafidhahullah, it is desirable for a person to hasten, let me say that again, it is desirable for a person to hasten to make up the fast days of Ramadan so as not to be accountable for it. If a person didn't fast in Ramadan, does he need to make up the qada and the making up the missed days that he missed in Ramadan right away? Or has he got time? Now, the author is going to talk about this in more detail here, but this is now from another asl from usul al-fiqh, which is that wajib is of two types. If something is wajib upon you, it is of two types. And this is really important for us to understand, especially for those people who procrastinate. Wallahi, fiqh not only teaches us what is halal and what is haram, but it gives us akhlaq. It gives us behaviorisms. It gives us an attitude which is correct. That's why usul al-fiqh and fiqh is very important. A person might say, okay, Salat al-Asr began, I don't know, about a couple of hours ago. Can I pray 10 minutes before Salat al-Maghrib? So he might have it in his head that, yeah, well, it's still Asr time, so I can pray whenever. Now that's not the right attitude. And this is what the Shaykh is saying here. It's desirable to make it up right away. Now going back to the foundation, the principle that we had, the ulama have said the wajib is of two types. Al-muwassa and mudayyiq. Al-muwassa and mudayyiq. Al-muwassa, wajib muwassa, is that thing which is wajib upon you and you've got a long period of time for you to fulfill the requirement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you do it at the beginning, or the middle, or the end, there is no harm. So for example, Hajj. Hajj is wajib upon a person once in his lifetime. Say you've got the money right now, but you can't go for whatever reason. Are you now sinful for not going? The answer is no, because there is a reason for you not needing to go. This is because this is wajib muwassa'. But there could be something which is wajib mudayyiq. So for example, going back to salah times, sometimes the time for salah is only about an hour, hour and a half, especially maghrib and sometimes even fajr during the winter months. So if a person was to say, okay, the time for salah is begun, and say, yeah, I still got time. Let me just finish this. Let me just do this. Oh, I remember something else. For you to now understand that wajib is of two types, it will help you in your interaction with what is halal and what is haram, with the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with His sharia, that will make you a person of taqwa. So what he is saying here, if you didn't fast in Ramadan, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ, that you just need to make up those days that you didn't fast in Ramadan. Is that muwassa or is that mudayyiq? That's muwassa. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, make up the days. Has He specified when? No. And as we will talk about inshallah, when we talk about making qada, he's got until next Ramadan. So he's got a period of 11 months to make up qada for the Ramadan days that he didn't fast. This is a muwassa'. But some things are mudayyiq. And even in the muwassa', look what he is saying here, it is desirable for the one to hasten to make up for the missed days in Ramadan so as not to be accountable for it. Look at it. So as not to be accountable for it. Pay attention to those words. Something is wajib upon you. You think, I've got time, I've got an hour, I've got 2 hours, I've got 11 months, I've got my lifetime, Hajj. Shaykh is saying here, that's not the correct attitude. That is not ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, but also something could happen and now you're accountable. Because now the wajib has made you accountable. Yes, fair enough, you've got a large period of time, but you are now accountable. So if you were to pass away, look what he says, so as not to be accountable for it. It is also desirable to make up the missed days consecutively, just as the actual days are fasted consecutively. Now this is something which is known, this is something which is with the ulama anyway, from the different madhahib. But say a person didn't fast the 4th day of Ramadan, and then the 6th day of Ramadan, and then the 7th day of Ramadan, let's just say by example. Does he now have to have the intention when he's making the qada, oh Allah, this is for the 4th day, and this is for the 6th day, and this is for the 7th day? With the Hanabila, as you can see here, it should be done consecutively. The qada has to be done consecutively. Another example. A person owes days for this Ramadan and they owe days for last Ramadan. Which one do you begin with first? You begin with last Ramadan, and then you do this Ramadan according to this madhab. The majority have said it doesn't have to be done consecutively. The Shaykh is even saying here that it is desirable, but like I said, this is a mas'ala that's come out from the Hanabila, that it should be done consecutively, and that a person must have the intention for it to be done in order. Moreover, so now again, this is a bit confusing if you were to read this in English. So what he has said here, it is desirable to make up the missed days as soon as you can, and it is desirable for you to do it in order. But then he says, moreover, it is permissible to delay. So how is it desirable and permissible? When you can understand that al-wajib and wujub is mudayyiq and muwassa', then you can understand. What he is basically saying here, look, you've got 11 months. That's your target now. That's your time frame. Okay? It is desirable for you to do it as soon as you can. In Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah if you have to, Muharram. And do not leave it until Rajab and Sha'ban before the next Ramadan. That's what is desirable. But it is permissible for you to delay all the way to Sha'ban if you have to. As its compensation time is flexible. This is what he is saying. Why? Because making up qada for Ramadan is al-wajib musa. In other words, every obligatory or every obligation that does not demand a specific time, wujub al-mudayyiq, is permitted to be delayed, but with the intention of making up for it. We're very important here. With the intention of making up for it. Very important. Why is that important? Imagine you missed up something which is a specific act of worship at a specific time. If you do not intend to make qada, then you become sinful. What's the ruling of a person if he doesn't pray one salah? Salat al-Asr right now, he didn't pray it. You tell him, wake up, not interested. May Allah protect us. What's the ruling on that person? I'm interested to see your view on this. What's the ruling? Is he still Muslim or is he not Muslim? Not Muslim. Muslim? Huh? He doesn't want to pray. It's not he's got an excuse. Laziness, negligence, you remind him, wake up, pray, salah, learn for Asr. Inshallah, make dua for him. Not Muslim. What do you think? Huh? Kufr. Allah knows best. What do you think? Muslim. The majority say Muslim. The Hanabila say even one salah outside. No, not Muslim. Not Muslim. Allah preserve you upon the salat. Look what he is saying here now, right? According to the view that you miss one salat and you become a murtad and you're outside the fold of Islam, imagine now the person was travelling. Would you now take back your view of takfir upon him? Why would you do that? Because look what he is saying here. It is permitted to delay with the intention of making qada. The Hanabila have said, you must have the intention. Okay, you're not going to do that act of worship right now, which is obligatory upon you, but you need to have the intention to make qada upon it, and you need to have the intention to be of those people who are from the people of Ahlul A'dhar, which is the next chapter. Otherwise, you are sinful. And in the case of salah, you are outside the fold of Islam. So now, for example, a person is travelling. It's time for dhuhr. He's missed dhuhr. According to the Hanabila, he's outside the fold of Islam. But at the time of dhuhr, if he intends that, look, I'm from the people who are travelling, I'm going to make combined with Salat al-Asr, then that person is following the Sunnah. So that's why this wording here is very important. It is permitted to delay, but with the intention of making it up, so as to not falling into those people who are sinful. In addition, it is permissible to make up separately with the days and not have them done successively. So now what he is saying here, what is desirable and what is permissible. It is desirable that he makes up the qada right away, and it is desirable that he does them in order, having the niyyah for the days that he has missed consecutively. However, it is permissible for him to delay, and it is permissible for him to split them up. On the other hand, if it is the month of Sha'ban of the following year, and they have not been performed, the qada from the previous year, and he's only got a limited period of time before the commencement of the new Ramadan, in this case the person must make it up right away and successively. So for example, the person owes 7 days from this Ramadan. Next Sha'ban, which is the month before Ramadan, say he's procrastinated 11 months or 10 months, he's procrastinated. He's just delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. Now there's 2 weeks left before the next Ramadan. He still owes for this Ramadan. What do we say to him? We say to him, now in this scenario, what was muwassa has become mudayyiq, and you must complete the qada, even if it has to be done successively. Before, that wasn't upon you. You had the option to do it whenever you wanted. You could have done it Mondays and Thursdays, you could have done 1 day every month, you could have done however you wanted. You could have waited until winter. But now because you procrastinate, and this is why fiqh is very important, usul fiqh is very important, because it gives you uslub, it gives you mannerisms and behaviorisms with your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, which creates servitude. Now this person has made it hard for himself. Why? Because of his own fault. In this scenario, the Shaykh is saying here, what was muwassa has become mudayyiq, then you must make up those days, even if it has to be done consecutively, which is now even more difficult, before the start of next Ramadan. And more on that is going to come later, as in what are the periods for qada. One is to make up fasting consecutively due to the limited time. This is what we've just said. However, it is impermissible to delay making up for fasting beyond the next Ramadan without a legal excuse. So now, if a person has not fasted, they've got 11 months to make it up. If they do it earlier, that is better. Okay. But what is the actual time period for qada? It is from Ramadan to Ramadan. So Ramadan now, 2023, 1444, he's got until Ramadan 1445, 2024, to make it up. If he doesn't do it, or if she doesn't do it, they are sinful, as he says, without a legal excuse. This is due to the statement of Aisha radiallahu anha. I mean, this is due to the statement of Allah as well, subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded it, that the person makes qada of it. How do we make qada? That is now explained in this statement of Aisha in Bukhari and Muslim. She said, I used to owe days from Ramadan, and I never used to make qada of them until Sha'ban in the following year, meaning just before the next Ramadan, to observe the duties of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This now tells us that the qada period is from Ramadan to Ramadan. If a person doesn't do it beyond that, then that person is sinful. So the Shaykh is saying here, this signifies that the time of making up for the unperformed fasting days of Ramadan is extensive, wajib muwassa', until the remaining days of Sha'ban are only enough for them to make them up in the following or before the following Ramadan. Therefore, it is obligatory for a person to make them up before the following Ramadan begins. And this is the view of the majority of the ulama. And this has been stated in the tafsir of the ayah that we have quoted from more than one of the companions. What happens if a person doesn't make it up? So now they owe days for this Ramadan. Next Ramadan comes, they still not make qada of it. What do? If a person delays making up for the missed fast of Ramadan until the following Ramadan, without an excuse, that person must make up the day that they already owe, so they need to make qada. And also what they have to do is they have to feed a poor person for every single day that they have missed with a quantity of half a sa' of food each day. Now this is the view of many of the Salaf, that they must make qada and expiate as well for each day. This is because the person has gone beyond the time period without an excuse. And this is the view of the majority of the ulama from the madhahib, the Malikiyyah, the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila. And they have based it on statements from Abu Hurairah, Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar, that if a person has not made up fasts from one Ramadan before the next Ramadan, they still owe those days in fasts, but they must also expiate by feeding a person with half a sa' of food for every single day. How much is half a sa'? So now, of an average man, whatever his hands can fill up, this is known as a mud. What I've got here now in front of me is a mud. 2 muds make half a sa'. 4 muds make a sa'. Now this is important also, as we will discuss when it comes to Zakat al-Fitr. Next week, we will all, either you're going to put the money in the box, or you're going to actually go to the supermarket and buy food. Actual staple food, actual ingredients. I'm going to give it to the poor people. And this is what is required, and this is what is desirable. And inshallah, we're going to talk about that next week. So what is the amount that you need to buy for each single person from your household? What will fill up 2 hands times 4. That's for one person. That makes 1 sa'. Now that's difficult because everything is packaged, etc. So the ulama have said roughly around 3 kilos. That's for Zakat al-Fitr. As for expiation, it's half a sa', so it makes it 1.5 kilos. So if a person has not fasted by next Ramadan, what they owe for this Ramadan, not only do they still need to make up the days, that is still wajib upon him, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَعِدَّةُ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ, so now he is still accountable for that. But because of the fact that he hasn't come with the act of worship at the period of time which was prescribed, he now needs to give an expiation fidya. What is the fidya? 1.5 kilos of staple food given to a poor Muslim person. And like I said, this is the view of many from the companions. The Hanafis, also the view of Ibn Taymiyyah, also the view of Imam Bukhari and others, they have said there is no dalil from the Quran or from the Sunnah to say that we need to expiate as well as making qada. These are from the views of the companions, but there is no dalil to say that it is wajib. And even if we were to take these views from these companions, Abu Hurairah, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, it suggests that it is recommended but not wajib. And this is the view from many of the contemporaries, I believe in Taymiyyah and others, and for me I think that this is the more correct view. Reason why, nobody, now this is very important when it comes to usul al-fiqh as well, so this is another principle, nobody can place something as an obligation upon a person until there is clear and explicit evidence for this. Otherwise, al-asl bara' al-dhimma, as the ulama have said. The asl is that you are not accountable for anything. That is the asl. You are not accountable for nothing. Do you need to pray? No. Do you need to fast? No. Do you need to go for hajj? No. Do you need to pay zakat? No. Do you need to, be obedient to your parents? No. The asl is that there is nothing upon you. Until the dalil comes to say, no, this is now wajib. So is there dalil to say you need to pray 5 times a day? Yes. Is there dalil to say that you need to give zakat every single year if you meet the nisab on the whole and you've got possession of it? Yes. Siyam? Yes. Hajj? Yes. Being dutiful to your parents? Now it's piling up because you've got the evidence. But the asl is, no. So if a person was to say to you now, such and such person has passed away, for example, come to the house so that we can do unified acts of worship, do you need to respond? We'll say the asl is, where's the evidence for that? Otherwise, you are putting upon something upon me which there is no evidence for, which now you are tasking me with something which there is no evidence for. In effect, what they are saying is, Yawm al-Qiyamah, I'm going to be asked about this because there is something in the Sharia to say that I should do this. So I need to prepare by doing this act of worship right now so I can stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have an answer for it. That's in essence what they are saying. But without any evidence for that, you can't say that. You can't say Yawm al-Qiyamah you're going to be judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this because there is no dalil for it. So this is what the Hanafis have said. Where is the dalil to say that you need to expiate as well as make qada? You've done the qada. Yes, the person has delayed, so you make tawbah and istighfar, but where is the dalil for expiation? They will say, qawl as-sahabi, statement of a companion, which is a principle in itself. The Sharia is based upon legislation from the Quran and the Sunnah, as well as statements from the companions. So if a statement comes from the companion, it is possible that that statement from the companion is legislative, and it makes halal and haram. But they have now said, no, these statements from the companions show that it is something which is mustahab. And for me, like I said, this is the stronger opinion, and also the opinion of many contemporaries, such as Ibn Baz and others. They have said, no, you don't need to give the expiation. If you did it, then it would be good. It's not a lot anyway, if you think about it. But we're not talking about whether it's easy for you or not. We're talking about, is this the religion of Allah? Right, next mas'ala. As for a person who dies before making up the unperformed fasts, before the beginning of the day of the following day of Ramadan, there is no blame on that person. Okay, a person passes away before it is wajib for him to fast Ramadan. Does he need to do anything? The Shaykh is saying here, there is no blame. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extend our lives upon goodness, as long as he knows that there is no fitna in it. Imagine if a person was to pass away tomorrow. Do your family members need to do anything for, what is it tomorrow? The 17th of Ramadan? 18th? 18th? 19th? Subhanallah. Huh? 30th? 30th tomorrow. Oh, 19. What do you say? 19. So tomorrow is the 19th of Ramadan, yeah? So now today's the 18th, you've completed the 18th, you've nearly completed the 18th. Imagine a person passes away before the 19th becomes wajib. Do we need to do anything? No. Now that is obviously common sense. But what is the principle for that? We've just mentioned it. Which is that this person has passed away before anything has been made wajib upon him, therefore there is nothing wajib upon him. Bara'at dhimma. Al-asl, bara'at dhimma upon every single one of us. So there is no blame. Okay. But if his death occurred during the period of permissibility, okay, so now he's talking about qada and non-qada. We're just talking about at the point of it becoming wajib. Okay, now he is saying here, a person owes qada, and he passes away before he's made the qada. As his death occurred during the period of permissibility to delay making up for non-performance of whatever fasting for the days of Ramadan. Because it is wajib muwassa', according to the Hanabila, he doesn't need to do anything. So this Ramadan, for example, a person owes 1 day of fasting. He passes away in June or July. He didn't make it up. What do we say? Doesn't need to do anything. Why? Because it is wajib muwassa'. He had plenty of time to make it up. He didn't make it up. He had the intention of making it up. He's not going to be accountable. This is the view of the Hanabila. Likewise, he who has a legal excuse, such as illness, or he's on a journey, so that he could not make up the missed days of Ramadan and dies after the beginning of the following Ramadan, there will be nothing upon him. Similar to what we just mentioned now. But if a person delays making up for the missed days for no legal excuse and then dies, then they must expiate from his inheritance. A person owes a day from this Ramadan and he doesn't give it and he passes away. What do we do for this person? According to the Hanabila, you expiate from his inheritance. The majority of the ulama have said, and this is hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Man mata wa alayhi siyam," anyone who passes away and he still owes siyam, whether it's for this Ramadan or any other Ramadan, sama anhu waliyuh, then his heirs have to fast on his behalf. And that seems to be the more stronger view. The Hanabila say, no, this hadith refers to oaths, and he's going to talk about that now. This refers to oaths. It doesn't refer to Ramadan. But the majority have said, no, the word siyam is all-inclusive. And this is also a very important principle when it comes to usul al-fiqh. If a word has been mentioned في النكرة في سياق الإثبات, then it is all-inclusive. It's mutlaq. It refers to all forms of siyam. من قام مع الإمام حتى ينصرف كتب له قيام الليلة. Whoever stands with the Imam until he finishes, then it has been written for him as if he fasted, as if he stood the whole night. Right. من قام مع الإمام. In this masjid, perhaps they're going to have Salat al-Tarawih and Salat al-Tahajjud. For you now to be included in this hadith, do you have to stand with both, or is one sufficient? Because now the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, as long as you are standing with the Imam until he completely finishes, in order for you now to be included in this hadith, you have to stand in both. Because he's not finished. The Imam is still standing. He's having a break. He's going to say, yeah, I'm going to come back at 1 o'clock or wherever it might be. He makes the announcement. For the first 20 nights of Ramadan, it's easier for you to do that because he finishes by 11 whatever. And you've been included in that. But now here what we're talking about, we're trying to understand the principle behind this. If you stand with the Imam, has the Imam finished? No. He's just having a break. Man mata wa alayhi siyam. What is fasting? Nakira fi siyak al-ithbat. This means all fasting. This means all standing. This is very important. So now the majority have said, anyone who owes a fast, then the heirs have to fast on his behalf. The Hanabila have said, and we're going to talk about that now, it does not refer to fasting in Ramadan. Now here, it refers to fasting of oaths and expiations. Now here, this is something which is really important. Now I feel that a lot of people are negligent of. When it comes to leaving behind instructions after death, quite often we leave behind instructions for what is tangible, materialistic and financial. When I die, I want my bank balance to be dealt with in this manner. When I die, I want my cars and my houses and my clothes and jewelry or whatever it is to be dealt with in this manner. What about the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Wallahi al-Azim, I've witnessed myself, so many people, they pass away and they've got a debt with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nobody's paying it off. Will this person be accountable? He's going to be accountable Yawm al-Qiyamah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of those people who have made a mistake. We're not saying this in a manner of trying to rebuke them or have bad thoughts of the deceased. But this is something, whilst we are alive, we need to make sure that we've got right. And there is no age limit on it. Don't think, well, I'm still young. It doesn't really concern me about bequeathment. Wallahi, death is not going to send you a WhatsApp message to tell you I'm coming tonight. Be ready. He's not going to send you a postcard to ask you if you're prepared or not. He's not going to come to your door and knock and ask for permission. Death will come, and either he will say salam or he will not say salam. He will either say la khawfun alaykum wa la antum tahzanun, or he will say come out, O wretched soul. And then what excuse have you got in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So my point of mentioning this is that if a person has any kind of wajibat with Allah, whether it's zakat, whether it's siyam, whether it's an expiation, whether it's a debt that he owes to someone else, yes, that is from the huquq of the ibad, of the servants, but this is something that your person will be questioned with in front of Allah. All of these things need to be written down right away. If somebody's giving you an amana, for example, here's £10, drop it into the masjid donation box. You've got that person's money on you. What are you going to do with Allah if he was to ask you about that? So make sure you write these things down. If a person has not fasted, if a person has outstanding acts of worship, make it known, at least make it known to your next of kin. At least if you haven't got the ability to write it down. Right, so now the author is saying here, if a person, so now just to recap this last paragraph, if a person passes away before fasting is wajib upon him, there is nothing upon him. If a person passes away whilst he's got qada, what he is saying here, the heirs, they take for every single day the feeding of a poor person out of the wealth that you have left behind. And then it's done with them. The majority of the ulama have said no. If a person has passed away and he owes siyam, then the heirs need to fast on his behalf, because the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, Sama anhu waliyah. Before we move on to the next one, you've got a question there? Have you answered it? Yeah, go on.
I was going to ask, you know how you said you need to, for Tarawih and Tahajjud, if you want to follow the Imam to the end?
Yeah.
What if there's two different Imams and they both pray witr? Would I have to do both or something?
Okay, so now the question is asking if there are two separate imams and they're praying witr twice, once in the beginning of the night and the end of the night. This is known as ta'qeeb. This is a mas'ala which is known as ta'qeeb. And with the majority of the ulama, ta'qeeb is makruh and it's not allowed. Ta'qeeb is when you've got one imam and he's prayed whatever, 20 or 8, wherever it might be. He says, we're not doing witr right now. We're going to come back the last third of the night and we're going to pray last third of the night. And this is established from the companions. Umar radiallahu anh, he said that the people who are sleeping are going to get the reward more so than the people who are praying. What does he mean by that? Meaning the people who are praying at the beginning of the night after Salatul Isha, they're going to have less reward than the people who are going to pray at the last third of the night. Of course, last third of the night. Anas bin Malik radiallahu anh, he said those people who come back, they're only coming back to khayr. Meaning they've prayed in the beginning and they're going to come back and they're going to have a second jama'ah, they're only going to come back to even more khair. Now these are statements from the companions. Is it binding, as we have seen from the usul al-fiqh? Is it binding or not? Not necessarily. However, the Messenger of Allah, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, إِذَا دَخَلَ الْعَشْرِ, when the last 10 used to begin, شِدَّ مَعْزَرَ, he used to tighten his waist wrap, meaning he used to become more diligent in acts of worship. وَأَحْيَا لَيْلًا, he used to stand up all night, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَأَيْقَظَ أَهْلَهُ, and he used to wake up his family. What's he going to wake up his family for? Just wake up. Just listen to me. No, obviously they're going to pray as well. Therefore, they would have prayed in the last third of the night. Therefore, there is no question about its legislation. This is known as ta'qeeb. However, the ulama have said what is not allowed is that you have two witrs, two jama'ah which are concluding separately. Now you can understand how that is wrong, especially the fact the Messenger of Allah said, La witran fil layla, there are no two witrs in one night. And also you're going to split up the jama'ah. This jama'ah is going to pray with this one, this jama'ah is going to pray with that one. Therefore this is makruh with the ulama. However, if the masjid have gone with the view that you can have two witrs or you can have ta'qeeb in this manner, then I would say in that scenario, make the first witr into shafa. You with me on that? So when the imam has completed the witr, you stand up and make it into an even number and then come back and pray with the second jama'ah and concluding with the witr at the end of the night. What if there's two separate imams? As long as the station of the imam is still there, then man qama ma'a al-imam still applies. And the evidence for that is that Umar radiallahu anh, he used to have Tamim al-Dari and Ubay bin Ka'b, two separate imams, and they used to lead Salatul Tarawih. And the companions that prayed and the tabi'een that used to pray, they used to pray behind both of them until the position of the imam has been concluded. So it doesn't matter, even if you've got 10 imams, makes no difference. As long as there is an imam that is there, you have to complete the salah, the night prayer with him in order for you to be included into that hadith. If a person leaves before the imam has concluded or he has left at any point in the night, he's not done anything which is sinful. It just means that he is not included in the hadith, which is including him in praying all night. Yes.
I was going to say, Paul, I think you might have answered it. He said if you pray Tarawih in one masjid and then Qiyamul Layl in a different masjid.
Yeah. If you pray in two separate masjids, if a person prays Tarawih in one masjid and he prays Salatul Tahajjud and Qiyamul Layl in a separate masjid, is that included? Now, the first thing that we need to highlight is travelling between masajid. The ulama have said that this is makruh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Tawbah, لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم حقا تكون فيه. The masjid which has been established from the first day upon taqwa, that has most right for you to pray in it. Now this applies to Quba, and this applies to Masjid al-Nabawi, and this is within the context of Nifaq and Masjid Dirar. That's the tafsir. But is there something that we can deduce from there, from the fiqh? The ulama have said that the masjid which is closest to you has more right than any other masjid in the city. We are here now. where you are standing outside right now on this road here, I don't know what it's called, but on this road here, if you stood there at the time of adhan, you'd probably hear adhan from 3 or 4 masjids. You've got Huda over there, you've got Marcus Tawheed over there, you've got Salahuddin, you've got Furqan. 4 masjids, just there, right here. Which one do you follow then? The adhan is being called. Which one do you respond to? Based on this now, is that you stay with your local masjid, the one that is closest to you. At the time of Imam Ahmad, they used to go to Imam Ahmad's masjid because he's Imam Ahmad, and his recitation has been described as being really melodious and beautiful. When he found out that the masjid is full, and he said, where does this come from? It's not like this in normal salawat, it's not like even like this in Jumu'ah. Where did this come from? When he found out that people are coming from different parts of the city to pray behind him, he made inkar of it. He said, go back to your masajid and do not leave your local imam. So that's the first thing that we need to highlight, which is the masjid which you are normally attending, the masjid which is closest to you. Okay, fair enough, the masjid that is closest to you might not be a Salafi masjid or Sunni masjid, then you might want to go to the closest Sunni masjid. I mean, there is an understanding there, but what we are saying here is you attach yourself to one masjid which is the closest masjid and the masjid which you have a regular attendance with. And now you can see the hikmah in this also, because these are your brothers, these are brothers that you pray with regularly, this is the day of Eid. I mean, on the day of Eid, this is another musibah that happens, especially our masjid, masjid is empty. Everybody's just dispersed. So one person praying in the park, another person praying in another park, another person praying in another masjid because they're giving away free donuts. And this is what's happening. It's a musibah, wallah. I mean, I'm not here to judge anyone, but I'm just trying to say from the ahkam, this is contradictory, this is conflicting the sharia. You stay with your masjid. Doesn't matter, you can buy a donut anytime. So the point here that we're making here, is that should you be travelling? The answer is no. But if you did travel, man qama ma'al imam. So inshallah you're still included in the generality of standing with the imam. So if you prayed Tarawih in one and you prayed Tahajjud in another, then you're included. This is going back to, I know we're kind of digressing here, but this is going back to another mas'ala, which is that some of the Salaf, they have said, what is the bare minimum that a person can do when it comes to Ramadan, especially Laylatul Qadr? And you will find many of the statements from the companions of Ibn Abbas and others, they have said, pray Salatul Isha in Jama'ah, pray Salatul Fajr in Jama'ah, that is the bare minimum that you can do Laylatul Qadr. Imagine, I mean, we're not condoning this, but imagine a person prays Salatul Isha, Laylatul Qadr, 27th Ramadan, all throughout the last 10, let's say for example, he goes home and he goes to sleep. He wakes up and he goes for Salatul Fajr. According to the companions, this person has done a great deal of goodness. Why? He has done what is wajib upon him at the beginning of the night or the end of the night and at the beginning of the day. And this is what is wajib upon him. And we talked about this before, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated upon him, he's done that, what else more can he ask for? Especially the fact that the Messenger of Allah said if a person prays in Jama'ah at the beginning, meaning Isha, and then he prays in Jama'ah at Salatul Fajr, it has been written as if he's prayed the whole night. So that's it. So that's one fadilah and that is one virtue. Can we add upon that? Yes, we can add upon that. Man qama laylatul qiyam, man qama laylatul qadr, imanan wa ihtisaba, ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min. That's now another one. Add upon that now. If he stands laylatul qadr, all of his previous sins are forgiven. Another hadith, let's add that upon now. If a person prays with the imam, it is as if he is written, as if he has prayed in qiyam throughout the whole night. Salamun here hatta matla'i al-fajr, according to one of the tafsirs, salam for the people who are standing and making dua and dhikr of Allah. The malaika come down on that night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a select group of malaika. They will come down and they will be with you, next to you, on Laylatul Qadr, as long as you are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are they doing? Salamu alaykum, salamu alaykum, salamu alaykum. Oh Allah, send salam upon this person. Oh Allah, send salam upon. Hatta, until the Fajr has been broken, the daybreak. That now is a virtue. And it continues, and it continues. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees people from the fire, etc. So now, I just want to highlight this for brothers as well as sisters. They think, okay, well, I'm on my menses, so there's certain things that I can't do, and there's certain things that I can do, and it's now restricted me. There are certain things that I wanted to do, but I can't do them. do not despair from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just because there is one hadith that you can't act upon, there are a number of things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened up in this month. This is a month of khair and blessings and barakah, and the doors of Jannah are open, and there's not just one door of Jannah. Right, I need to summarize this next bit, so I'm just going to paraphrase what he says. The Shaykh is saying here, as for making up fasts for the deceased, then it only applies for expiations and oaths. And the Hanabila have said it doesn't apply to Ramadan. And the reason why is, now he's got a statement of Ibn Qayyim and also Ibn Taymiyyah. I mean, this book is available online, it's PDF, Mulakhas al-Fiqhi. I think it's called the Summarized Fiqh. If you want, I can give you the name, we can look for it together afterwards. It's available in English, it's a very good book. It's basic fiqh, it's for all ages. And it starts off from Tahara all the way to the end of the chapters of fiqh. And I feel that every single home should have this. If you want to buy the book version, I think it's roughly around £40. A little bit expensive, but it's definitely worth it. Because in this you can now understand how fiqh works. So what he is saying here, if a person passes away and he owes fasts, this does not apply to Ramadan according to the Hanabila. Why? They have said, now this is similar to what the Hanafis have said as well. When a person says, Wallahi, I will not, I don't know, what kind of an oath? I've never said an oath in my life. Wallahi, I will not drink Coca-Cola, random in my head. I will never drink Coca-Cola ever again. Now I've drunk Coca-Cola. What do I have to do? I have to give an expiation. Now the Hanabila have said, if I die and I've not given the expiation for it, my heirs have to fast on my behalf. Why? Because I've done this to myself. I've put this condition of binding condition on myself, and because of that there is a consequence, and because of that there has to be some kind of repercussion. As for Ramadan, the person's passed away. And if he's passed away, how can he be accountable? He's got wajib al-muwassa, and he's got a large period of time. If he's passed away, then there's nothing. You don't have to do anything. The only thing you can do is if there has been negligence on his behalf and he's gone beyond the period that should have been, you give the fidya from that. And like I said, the Hanafis have got something similar as well, where they have basically said oaths cannot change the religion of Allah. That's going into a separate topic which we don't want to go into right now. So now that has talked about qada. How do we make qada? When do we make qada? And the time period of qada. Chapter number 5, Ahlul A'dhar. Those people who are permitted to break their fast. Allah glorified and exalted be He, has decreed the obligation of fasting of Ramadan on Muslims. It is to be performed without no legal excuse. Yet unperformed fasting in the days of Ramadan are to be made up at a later date for those who have a legal excuse. Now, the Shaykh is basically saying here, there are 3 types of people when it comes to not fasting Ramadan. Now this is very important, very important. Like I said, I think we gave an example last time. Quite often a person thinks, I can't fast, I'll pay the fidya and that's it, it's done. It doesn't work like that. There are 3 scenarios. A person is able to fast. He must fast. A person, I'm going to add a 4th one. Okay, the first one is able to fast, he must fast. The second one, the person is able to fast but with a great deal of difficulty. He's going to talk about this. With a great deal of difficulty. What do we say to this person? Take the concession, break the fast, brother. Don't do this to yourself. He now has no ability. We're not talking, now there is a fine line between 1 and 2. 1, he is able to fast, absolutely fine, carry on fasting. Or included in ability, there is some difficulty involved, such as travelling, such as he's got some kind of an illness, but he can still do it. It's not going to cause him harm. It's just a little bit of a discomfort. He falls into first category, which is he is able. Right. Second one is where a person is really struggling. Really struggling. It's harming him, the fast. What do we say to that person? Break your fast. Eat and drink. Maybe take some medication. But break it. Don't do this to yourself. Make the qada later on. Does he give fidya? No, he needs to give qada. Third category is a person who's got a temporary excuse. Similar to the second one, but this could be more It could be a longer duration of time, such as a person who is breastfeeding, such as a person who is pregnant, such as a person who's going through a temporary illness. This person must make qada. There is no such thing as fidya for this person. A lot of people make a mistake in giving fidya when the person is able to make qada. If you are able to make qada, then there is no such thing as giving fidya. And then there is a fourth category where a person has no ability to fast whatsoever. There's actually a fifth category actually. Fourth category, this person, they are mukallaf, they are adult, they are sane, they are Muslim, but the ability is not there and the ability is not coming about. Such as old age, such as permanent illness, such as a person who is diabetic. The doctor says to him, listen, if you're going to go for 10 hours without fasting, you could have a seizure, you could have a blood clot, you could die. This person, there is no hope for recovery. This person gives fidya, only this person. Like I said, a lot of people, they jump to fidya straight away. No, fidya is only for those people who have no ability to make qada. And then there's a fifth category. A person who suffers from dementia, let's say. Which one does he fall into? 1, 2, 3, 4, or shall we make a fifth category for him? 4? Are you sure? Why would you say 4?
Because it's permanent and can't get out.
But dementia, the person, he doesn't know what's going on. You tell him it's day, he thinks it's night.
Yeah, but so that means he can't fast.
So now there's a fifth category, which is this person has no taklif or accountability on him whatsoever. The pen is completely lifted from this person. For this person there is no qada, and for this person there is no fidya. He is not in the asl of the khitab, he is not in the asl, in the origin of the obligation, which is وَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Whoever witnesses the establishment of Ramadan, then he must fast. He's not included at all. Child, not included at all. Non-Muslim, not included at all. Etc. So these people, there is no qada for these people. There is no fidya for these people. Imagine a non-Muslim says to you, well, I didn't fast Ramadan, but I feel like I am close to Muslims. Can I fast? And say, oh, you don't need to fast. Shall I give the fidya? No, because this person is not included in that at all. So this actually summarizes everything. Should we just call it a day or shall we read it? What do you think?
No, Karen.
Yeah.
Just quick question on the old age. Can you sort of define what it means by old age? Because, somebody like me now is a granddad. But,
Well, I met a granddad who was like 26, I think he was, 27. Don't ask me how, I really don't know. Maybe that wasn't his real age, maybe he was like trying to cheat me or something, I don't know. Maybe he's like 40, like, I'm 25. Anyway, what is old age? Old age is subjective. Here, what we mean by old age, we're talking about ability. Wallah, you probably know this as well. I know people in their 70s and their 80s, they're able to fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it to them.
But is it wajib on them to fast first?
If they are able to fast,
yeah.
It is wajib.
Even if they're 70, 80?
If they are able to fast without any difficulty, look now, there's 5 categories. Number 1, they are Muslim, they are sane, and they are adult. Right? So now the pen is upon them. So now we need to see which one of these 4, because they are now included in the obligation of fasting. They are included in the ayah, فَلْيَصُمْ. He has to fast, because Allah has commanded him. So now, they're not in that category. Which one are they in category? Have they got a temporary illness? Is old age temporary? No, it's not. What else did we say? Is the ability, are they fully able? Then you need to inspect. She or he might be fully able. They might go through, especially when it comes to the winter months. So you can't put a number on it. You can't put, okay, at the age of 70, khalas, you don't need to fast anymore. It's not about that. It's about ability. So it's these 5 categories. Are you able to go through the whole day without any difficulty to your body? Then you must do so. If you are able to go through the day, but there's a great deal of difficulty involved, but you can still make qada later on, then you still make the qada later on. So if the person who's 80 years old, 90 years old can't fast now until 7:50, Maghrib, 7:50. So we'll say to them, okay, can you fast and make qada later on when it's easier for you to do so? Then the answer is yes. When Maghrib is at 3:51, 3:52, then they must do so. If they've got an illness which is temporary, same ruling, it's the same conclusion as the second category. Or then now we've got a fourth category, which is no, we can't do that, we can't do that either. There's just no way. I can't go for that long without food. So there is no age limit on it. For that scenario, then they give fidya. Yes, brother.
Yeah, okay, so suppose when you die and you have an obligation to Allah, and it's now to your heirs, and that's for the oaths, right?
Yeah. No, it's not just for the oath. Like we said, the correct view is that anything that you owe as an obligation for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the heirs need to take that into consideration. Now, yeah, go on, carry on with your question. There was another thing connected to that.
Okay, you can mention that, but so if, say you tell your heirs, or you tell your kin that this is what I'm missing if I die, and you pick these up for me, is now the obligation of you now.
Yeah.
They are negligent.
Yeah, it's on them. فَمَنْ بَدَّلَهُ بَعْدَ مَا سَمِعُوا فَإِثْمُهُ الَّذِينَ يُبَدِّلُونَ. Once the bequeathment has been established, and this is why I say you need to write it down and have witnesses. This is from the ahkam of the bequeathment. But even if you've got audio recording, I mean, it's a lot easier now. Or you've got something, the ulama have even said that if you've got something written down, they can tell that this is his handwriting and it's been dated and it's been signed or whatever. Now that's been transferred onto them automatically. Just like inheritance is transferred onto them automatically. If they don't fulfill your wishes, then the sin is upon them. Yes.
My question is basically, let's say someone was not practicing for 30 years of their life and they have no clue how many Ramadans they've not prayed and fasted. How many Ramadans are they then?
So now the question is asking here, they haven't fasted for a long period of time. What do? They need to then estimate. They didn't need to estimate. So imagine if a person didn't fast for 5 Ramadans. 150 days roughly. He needs to make that up. How is he going to do that? It's difficult, so you need to write that down. Going back to the Muslim here, you need to leave behind some kind of instruction to tell people, listen, I hold 150 days. I've tried my best, I've brought it down to 140. If I die now, make sure you feed 140 people for every single day that I didn't fast. That is now off your shoulders, and inshallah you will not be accountable in front of Allah. However, now a person will say, how is it possible that a person is going to make up 150 days? We go back to the 5 categories. Is he able to do it? The answer is yes, then he must make qada. There is no way that a person can jump to fidya just because he's got a large number. There's no way that a person can jump to fidya just because of his age. These are the 5 when we can understand. Like I said, we've just summarized it. If you can understand that, alhamdulillah, you understood a great deal of good when it comes to fidya. Because a lot of people, they jump to fidya straight away, some people. Yes. Consecutive, we talked about that before. If a person is desirable to do it consecutively, 150 days, but it's permissible for him not to do it 150 days in a row, yes.
Going back to the brother's point, let's say it's not just Ramadan for the prayer, so how would a person do the prayer?
Okay, salat, okay, so now here. All acts of worship can only be established with evidence. Principle number 1. Principle number 2. If I've missed said act of worship, do I make qada of it? In its asal, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made acts of worship limited to periods of time, except for Hajj. Hajj is the only exception. Zakat once every year. Ramadan a month every year. Salat 2 hours periodically throughout the day. There is no such thing as a person saying, well, I'll pray Fajr at 7 o'clock in the evening. So the second principle that we have to understand, the acts of worship are limited in the Salati Kana al-Mu'minina Kitaban Mawquta, appointed times. Second one. Third one, on behalf of the deceased, this is the thing that you reminded me of, on behalf of the deceased, what can we do? So now you're asking here, if a person passes away, he hasn't prayed for 10 years, what do we do on his behalf? What does he do on his behalf once he is still alive? Now this is something which is contradictory with the majority and how they respond to the Hanabila. The Hanabila have said if a person passes away, there is no siyam for him if he didn't fast Ramadan, only for those expiations and those oaths that he didn't fast. What about doing acts of worship on behalf of the deceased? The Hanabila say yes. You can fast on behalf of him, you can pray salah on behalf of him, you can do tawaf on behalf of him, you can give sadaqah on behalf of him, you can recite Quran and say, oh Allah, give this on behalf of my father that's passed away. So now they have said, okay, well, you can do Isal al-Thawab, this is known as Isal al-Thawab, which is sending rewards on behalf of the deceased. You can do that, but you can't do this. So this is one of the responses from the majority of ulama. The correct view now is, if a person has missed the act of time of worship, he now needs daleel to say that qada is binding upon him, otherwise, asl bara'at dhimma. We talked about that before, so we don't need to repeat. Which is now, qada needs daleel in itself. Because what was the first principle? All acts of worship are based on daleel. So now, if a person missed Fajr for 20 years, 20 times 360, because in the lunar calendar 360. So 20 times 360? Yeah. 720. He now needs to pray 720 Fajrs. Is there any evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah to say that he needs to pray 720 Fajrs? 720 Dhuhrs? A person might argue, well, no, this is an act of worship that he owes to Allah. Okay, fair enough, let's take that. How does he do it then? Does he do it with every single Fajr? Does he pray 4 Fajrs in a day? Does that even exist? So the majority of the ulama have said, this is a difference of opinion, legitimate disagreement between the ulama. The majority have said, no. Acts of worship remain upon you because you are mukallaf. If you didn't do it at its prescribed time, that's on you. That's your fault. You still need to make qada of it. That's the view of the majority. However, the view of the Malikiyya and the Zahiriyya, and this is the view of Ibn Taymiyyah and Uthaymeen and others, they have said, no, listen, you've missed the time on purpose. There's no such thing as qada. If you've missed it on purpose, you need to now make tawbah and istighfar and come with the jins of amal come with plentiful of that act of worship which you have missed out on, optional increase in it. Unless if you've got dalil to say that you missed the act of worship and that you still owe qada. So salah, no, but zakat, yes. Salah, no, but siyam, yes, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. So the qada has already been established. As for salah, there is no evidence to say that salah can be made qada in this manner. Right. The author is now saying here, so I'm just going to quickly summarize this because it's been lengthy. It's been over an hour already. So the Shaykh is basically saying here, like we have said, the 5 categories of people. If a person is in category number 1, let's go reverse, he is not mukallaf at all, because this person, barakallahu fik, this person either is not Muslim, he is not an adult, or he is not conscious. And what we're talking about conscious, going back to your question as to what is old age, is when you talk to them and they can understand and then they can reciprocate. That's what we're talking about here. So imagine there's a person who's really old and you say to him, it's time for Asr, and he gets something, oh, it's Maghrib time. This person, no, it's Asr. Oh, I know, it's Maghrib time. This person, you now know there's something wrong, he's not able to comprehend, may Allah protect us, so that person is not mukallaf anymore. That's what we refer to as sanity, and it's not a nice way of talking about it, but that's not what it is. Okay, so now that's the first. Second group, we talked about those people, going backwards. So the second group, the Shaykh is saying here, those people, he is saying here, they are hopelessly sick. With regard to such person, Allah relieves them from fasting, enjoining upon them feeding a poor person for every single day that they didn't perform the fast. How much do we need to feed now as fidya? Talked about it before.
30 people.
How much do you give?
Half a sack.
Half a sa'. Excellent. How do we do that? The majority of the ulama have said you must give half a sa' of staple food to the poor person so that they will then benefit in a manner that they want to benefit themselves. Rice, give them rice. Dates, give them dates. Grains, give them grains. Nuts, give them nuts. Wherever it is. Others from the ulama have said you can do that, or you can provide them with a meal which is going to fill them with that one meal for every single day, or at the end of the month, 30 poor people. And that seems to be the more correct view, because this is what Anas bin Malik used to do. At the end of the month, he used to gather 30 people, 30 poor people, and he used to feed every single one of them, and that was the fidya completed. As for those who are hopeless, now there is a a number of things that I wanted to discuss here, because this now is an issue of great deal of difference of opinion between the ulama. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يُتِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. Those people who are not able to fast, then they give fidya of feeding a poor person in its stead. Is that still muhkam or is it mansukh? This is an issue that we really don't want to go into right now because it is lengthy, but it is also very important. But just to summarize now, those people who are not mukallaf, they do not fast. Those people who are hopelessly sick, as he is saying here, then those people you feed a poor person in its stead. As for those people who have a legal excuse for not fasting, such as a traveller, such as a sick person, such as a woman who is pregnant, such as a woman who is breastfeeding, they might find some harm to themselves, such as a woman who is menstruating, such as a woman who is going through the postnatal bleeding. For these people, they make a number of days afterwards. Why? There is no such thing as fidya for these people. Why? Because they are able to fast. They're just not able to fast in Ramadan. So we'll say to them, don't fast right now, make it up later on. فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. As for those people who are... Okay, now when it comes to breastfeeding women and women who are pregnant, there is an issue of difference of opinion between the ulama on this. The Hanafis... Sorry, before we talk about the Hanafis, the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya, they say if the pregnant woman or the breastfeeding woman is not fasting because she herself is going to find it difficult, then she just makes qada. Her likelihood, or her likeliness, should I say, is like a sick person. However, if she fears for her child that she is feeding or holding or carrying, then she makes qada as well as expiation. Qada as well as feeding a poor person. This is the view of the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya, and this has been stated by Ibn Abbas and others from the companions. That's why they've said that, because there's statements from the companions.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
So now, if a woman is pregnant or she is breastfeeding, so she is with child, either she's carrying or she is breastfeeding. If she fears for herself, not for the child, then she makes qada. She is just like a sick person, right? But if she fears for the child, then she needs to make qada. So she doesn't need to fast, so she needs to make qada for herself, and then she needs to give an expiation for the child.
Right. Quick question on that. So if the pregnant woman feels fine, healthy, she should be fasting?
If she's able to, yes. If she's able to fast while she's pregnant and breastfeeding, then she should fast. Going back to what we were talking about before, ability. Ability is now, if she's able to fast, and there is no harm involved, then she is able. Traveller, if he's able to fast, a person's got a headache, if he's able to fast, you can see out the day, there's a bit of difficulty involved. No, you need to carry on fasting. But what do we mean by difficulty? We're talking about now a lot of pain. You can't bear it anymore. Now the ability has been lifted and the issue of taklif has been lifted for you. But taklif returns to you when the ability also returns. So there is no fidya, there is qada. So now going back to this mas'ala, what does she do? She needs to give qada as well as expiation. This is the view of the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya. The Malikiyya have said the breastfeeding woman or the pregnant woman, she needs to give fidya all circumstances. There's no qada. For the breastfeeding, for the woman with child, let's just say, yeah. So but what seems to be the correct view is if she is not fasting, either because she is pregnant or she is breastfeeding, then there is only qada. And like we said before, when we were talking about not making up the qada at its proper time, if she was to expiate, then this becomes mustahab also for her. But it is not something which is wajib, according to the correct view. This is the view of the Hanafis, and this is also the view of Ibn Taymiyyah and others. However, this is an issue of difference of opinion. So, I mean, the reason why I brought this up is because a lot of people are exposed to the fatwa where they have said, okay, if a woman is breastfeeding or she is pregnant, then she needs to expiate. And we get these kind of questions a lot. So now, hopefully, this has been answered. They've probably come across a fatwa from one of the ulama who has said she needs to give qada and she needs to expiate. If she's happy with that as a view, then she should follow it. But what seems for me to be the correct view, and like I said, this is the view of some of the contemporaries and also the view of Ibn Taymiyyah and others, which is that she's like a sick person. This is what has been said by Ibn Abbas. He said, radiyallahu anh, the Shaykh and Kabir and the Mar'a, who is pregnant and they are not able to fast, they are like the sick person. So what does a sick person do? There's no expiation for them, they just make qada. Okay. As for the menstruating woman who is in a state of the appropriate fasting, I think this summarizes everything, because I don't want to read through it all because it's lengthy and it's nearly Maghrib times. But there's one last mas'ala that he talks about in this chapter, which is if a person needs to make qada, then they must have the intention to make that qada before Salatul Fajr. So just like we have said, so now this is the case when it comes to all obligatory fasts, as the Shaykh is saying here. Obligatory fasts, the person must have the intention before Salatul Fajr. And this is the view of the majority of the ulama. This is based on the statement of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man lam yubayit al-niyya fala siyama lahu." Whoever does not intend fasting before Salatul Fajr, before dawn, then there is no fasting for that person. This is the view of the majority. The Malikiya have said all fasts need to have a niyyah before Fajr, including optional ones. But the author is saying here, no. When it comes to obligatory ones, that person must intend beforehand. On the other hand, it is permissible for a Muslim to intend performing optional fasts in the daytime. Therefore, when it comes to nawafil fasts, Mondays and Thursdays, Ayyam al-Bid, and the likes, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ sometimes used to establish his niyyah throughout the day. And we have an incident, or more than one incident. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, the Messenger of Allah, in this hadith she said, one day the Messenger of Allah, but this happens on more than one occasion. Messenger of Allah ﷺ comes home and he says, "Do you have anything to eat?" Aisha says, "We haven't got any food." Imagine, there's nothing in the fridge, there's nothing in the freezer, there's nothing in the cupboards. Nothing. Not even one grape to chew on. This is how he lives, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So they asked her, radiallahu anha, "How did you survive?" She said, "Aswadain, by the two dark ones, water and dates." The best of mankind, he had nothing from the dunya. That's all he had. Wallahi, if you miss out on the dunya, you're not missing out on anything. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never have wanted for His messengers to miss out on anything. Everything that he received was goodness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He received the best of everything. He received the best of this dunya in the way that Allah wanted it for him. So he comes home, there's no water, there's no dates, there's no rice, there's no bananas, there's no nothing. So he says, فَإِنِّي صَائِمٌ, so I'm fasting. So now, after Fajr, this is during the day, he says, okay, I'm fasting. So from the fiqh of this is that if a person, now how do we reconcile? He says in one hadith, if you don't establish your intention before Fajr, then there's no fasting. And in another one, he begins fasting. The Shaykh is saying here, the way that we can reconcile is that for obligatory fasts, whether it's Ramadan, whether it's qada, whether it's expiation, the person must have the intention before Salatul Fajr. As for optional fasts, then he must have the intention, or he can form the intention anytime. What about sunnah fasts? Like Arafah, like Ashura. A lot of the ulama have said these are now included in optional fasts. But for me, what seems to be the stronger view is that it's a specific act of worship. It's not a nafil act anymore. Arafah is not nafil. For me, this seems to be the strongest view in Malikiya. Ashura is not nafil. Therefore, for that, you need to have the intention beforehand. Similar to Tahiyyatul Masjid. You walk into the masjid and you just started praying. You have no intention, you just pray. Can you now say, "Oh Allah, make this tahiyyah"? Inshallah, there's no harm in that. But imagine you started praying, you say, "What am I doing? I'll make this my 2 rak'ah for Salatul Fajr Sunnah." Can you do that? No, because specific acts of worship requires an intention beforehand. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. You go into the bath. You're just having a normal shower. Then you realize that you're in janaba. Is it sufficient? No, because this was an optional. This is now something which is specific. The principle here, specific, requires a niyyah beforehand. And this, inshallah, concludes the chapters for today. Inshallah, the last chapter, which will be our session next week, chapter number 6, the ahkam surrounding zakat al-fitr bi-idhnillah. Yes, Ibrahim.
So then Mondays and Thursdays, or every other day, like the first class, is that a specific act of worship?
Mondays and Thursdays. Okay, so the question basically is asking here, how can we differentiate between nafl and something which is sunnah mu'akkada? Sunnah mu'akkada, either Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never left it himself, or he emphasized it. As for what he left open, without a specific reward, without being habitual on it himself, then these are optional. Mondays and Thursdays, sometimes he did it, sometimes he didn't do it. That teaches us that is optional. As for Ashura and Arafah, etc., he used to do it himself, and he encouraged this ummah, and he said that there was a specific reward connected to it. That now feeds the idea, and this is what makes me think that this view is stronger. The majority, Ibn Taymiyyah and others, they have said, no, Arafah is nothing. Ashura is nothing. But for me, I think this is specific.
Yeah. I mean, because you want to go to there's nothing on his farad.
Yes, according to the majority, yes. But now, just like Salah, you've got nafil, you've got farad, and you've got sunnah.
Yeah. No, I mean, Arafah is probably one of the other categories. It's not farad.
This is the view of the majority that we're saying here. But what we're saying is, for example, Salat, when you pray the two after Maghrib, is that nafil or is that sunnah mu'akkada? Yeah, so now we've got a third category. But this is the thing. This is where. So now it's going down to usul al-fiqh, and that's where we can understand one another. I mean, that's how we can tolerate. But the main thing is that when you can do that, then you can understand where the other person's coming from. You see what I'm trying to say? So now you'd respect your opinion, and I respect mine, and the other way around. Barakallah feekum. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us tawfiq and success, and that He gives us acceptance, and that He accepts our tawbah before we pass away. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He takes us in a manner that He is pleased with us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just as He has opened the doors of His rahmah and His jannah in this month, that He continues them open for us until we meet Him. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.